one and all for coming out. It's so important to be here every year. Reverend, beautiful prayer.
Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful prayer. And Father Vaughn, I know you'll follow up just as nicely. It is for good reason that we gather today with countless other Americans across the nation and across the world. Regardless of race, creed, or political persuasion, we gather in unified and solemn remembrance to honor the sacrifices of those who answered the nation's call and who have willingly laid down their life for our freedoms. Here in Pelham, 2010, 2011, we thought it appropriate to invite the community to participate, if you will, in the ceremony by providing your memorial, your memory of your family member who served and is now deceased. If you haven't already provided their name to our auxiliary, please do, and we'll be sure to read their name and hold them also in our hearts. This Memorial Day, as we join together, whether it's face-to-face or if only in mind and spirit, we remember their names and their service and their legacy. Those sacrifices are never forgotten. This is why we teach the youth of America, so important, to carry on this Memorial Day and these celebrations in the memory of those who served and sacrificed, those who sacrificed their lives, those families who sacrificed and went without moms or dads. Lest us not forget. Thank you.
Comrade Bill, Tommy, and I will read the names of this year's deceased comrades. Will the auxiliary members please bring forward the list of names of the deceased veterans from an audience to be honored today? Can you take over?
Okay, Major John Leonard, Air Force. Excuse me. Raymond Brunel, Army. Arnold Farm, Army. Emilio Dominic DeCastro, Navy. Warren Herbert, Army. William Herbert, Army. Frederick Herbert, Army. Paul Herbert, Marine. James Floyd, Navy. Christos Fanaris, Navy. Let me just move up.
Just read the one page and I'll go on.
Okay, go ahead. Yep.
Color Guard, attention. We will now read the honor roll of the deceased veterans for the VFW. George Blankenship, John Costello, Aram Jacobarian, Bill Wilson, and then I'll read some.
Yep.
All right, Fred Ford Jr., U.S. Army, Korea. Daniel Gold, Korean War, U.S. Army. David Morse, U.S. Navy. Norman Bristead, POW, U.S. Air Force. Richard Wolf, U.S. Army. Ronald Walsh, U.S. Navy. Emmett Bean Jr., U.S. Air Force. Raymond Bedard, U.S. Navy. Okay, you can read the next one.
Melvin Barney, Lost at Sea, Army. George Field, Army. Roy McCann, Navy. George Pacina, Navy. Donald Derry, Air Force. Paul Durand, Air Force. John Woodbury, Army. Warren Carpenter, Army. Arthur Hill, Navy. Ronald Bedard, Army. Dick Bedard, Air Force.
Ralph Roberts, U.S. Army. Bill Allen, U.S. Army and U.S. Marines. John Antok, U.S. Army. Emil Jushin, U.S. Navy. Walter Kowalski, U.S. Navy.
Fred Parent, Marine. John Roscoe, Army and Air Force. Leon Farron, Navy. Francis Mike Duchesne, Air Force. Royal Morse Jr., Army. George Sable, Army. Raymond Hosmer, Navy. Michael Jester, Air Force. Russell Wilfords, Coast Guard. Clarence Campbell, Navy. Arthur Damaris, Army.
James Bradley, U.S. Army. Charles Santos, Korean War, Vietnam War, U.S. Marine. Walter Kosk, U.S. Army. George Favreau, U.S. Army and U.S. Marines. James T. Long, U.S. Army. Joseph Silva, U.S. Air Force, Vietnam. Charles Silva, U.S. Air Force, Korea. A. Dominic Del Canto, U.S. Marines, World War II. Frank Breen, U.S. Army, World War I. Leon Breen, U.S. Army, World War II. Wayne Nash, U.S. Navy, Vietnam. William Jabot, U.S. Army, Vietnam. Wellesley Wells, U.S. Army and U.S. Air Force, World War II POW. Herrick Stagnenberger, U.S. Army, World War II POW.
John Bilski Sr., Air Force. Edgar West, Air Force. James Alexandropoulos, U.S. Army. Michael Walsh, U.S. Army. Robert Sweeter, Marine and Army. Okay. Please join me now in remembering the Pelham comrades that were killed in action fighting global conflicts as a resident of Pelham. World War II, Raymond Jurich, United States Army Air Force. Elmer G. Raymond Jr., U.S. Army Air Force. Donald Bagley, U.S. Reserve. Charles Parasol Jr., U.S. Navy. Vietnam. Edward Kulik, Jr., Army, U.S. Army. Barry Godfrey, U.S. Army. Sheldon Burnett, U.S. Army. Iraq, Daniel R. Janet, U.S. Army. Thank you.
Does she need water? Hold on. Okay. Let me. I got a chair too.
The Pelham Scouts will now help us present our ceremonial wreath of remembrance.
Detail, attention, present arms.
Red Club, head up, port out. Hey, five, hey, five, hey, five, reset, out.
Order arms.
Order!
Parade rest.
Parade! Rest!
You want to invite him? I'd like to invite Father Vaughn of St. Patrick's Church to come forward to offer today's benediction.
Let us pray. Eternal Father, giver and sustainer of life, you have said through the psalmist, "Precious in the eyes of the Lord is the death of his faithful ones." We come before you in the joy of our faith and in thanksgiving for the sacrifice of these departed heroes. We commend their souls to you. Lord, we ask that you help us to honor their memories by serving the living through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father Vaughn. We should do it. Sit. And we extend our thanks to the following people and groups for making today's event possible: Pelham Town Hall officials and staff, Pelham Police, Pelham firefighters, Rita McKay for the rendition of our national anthem, Boy and Girl Scouts who helped place the flags on our veterans' grave sites, Memorial School kids to place the homemade wreaths on veterans' graves, Bugler John Kelly for the rendition of taps, Sean Markey for the rendition of bagpipes, Gene Greenwood and PTP crew for professional coverage of this event, Director Brian Johnson and the Pelham Park and Recreation, the Gibson Cemetery crew for the maintenance of this pristine grounds. A special thanks to you, the citizens of Pelham, supporting our veterans and our Memorial Day ceremonies with your unwavering patriotism. Thank you for all attending. We will now meet at Town Center to place a wreath of monument. This concludes our ceremony. Commanders, take care of your units. All salute the MC. Fall out. Thanks for stepping up and doing a fine job. Thank you. Commander. Nice job. And Mr. Tommy.
Welcome. We are conducting the ceremony to honor the fallen so that others will be aware that we are a nation of many heroes who have earned the right to have their sacrifice honored and appreciated. The chaplain will now read the invocation.
Eternal Father, giver and sustainer of life, we come before you in the joy of our faith and in thanksgiving for the sacrifice of these departed heroes. We commend their souls to you. Lord, we ask you to help us honor their memories by serving the living. Amen.
Scouts and escort, advance and place the wreath. Present arms. Order arms. Parade rest. Detail dismiss. Thank you.
right, good evening. It's a little past 7, so we're going to start the forestry meeting. Today's June 28th, 2021. We should start off with attendance. You guys want to just call out your names? Check you off. Mary's here.
Bob Lammo.
Paul Gagnon. Charlie Gale.
All right. So we want to start the meeting with our first guest speaker, Eric Radloff.
Yeah, that one's good, because you can use the camera if you need, Eric.
Hi, Eric. Thanks for coming.
All right, so just jump right in?
Yeah, so you're going to update us on all the plans to conduct timber harvest and all that stuff, so wherever you want to start.
Perfect, yeah, let's do a brief kind of overview, and then as you have questions, feel free to chime in and we can dive into it a little bit more. So the plan kind of supposed to be for the summer, but we're looking at kind of, we'll say fall, probably like a September to October timeline. Basically is to conduct timber sales on the Merriam Farm property, which we just did a forest management plan on the previous year, 2020. And then next property that we're planning to do as well is going to be I call it Merriam Cutter, but the property off of Shelburne.
Yeah.
There's a sale there that we're looking to do. And then kind of the final piece is a small sale off of Spalding Hill Road, kind of, I guess it's called the East Spalding property. That's kind of referred to. So that's kind of a quick overview, and then I'll kind of dive into each of the properties, and then I kind of have some homework for you guys as well, and then
So fun.
get some thoughts, yeah, and some opinions on how to move forward with a few things. So, so first I want to dive into Merriam Farm, and this property here, for the access is going to be off of Moon Shadow Drive, and we're looking to build a ramp kind of off of the end of Moon Shadow Drive. Survey maps at just kind of a quick glance shows that we have access directly into the property off of Moon Shadow, but for kind of outreach, I think it'll be good to reach out to the abutters on the end of Moon Shadow Drive, just because it looks like we have some lawn and stuff. It kind of looks like they're kind of taking over that edge of the area as well. So in the spirit of being good neighbors, it's always good to reach out to the abutters and then just say, hey, this is what we're looking to do. This is what you can expect. It's kind of how I've done things before. I can either draft something or I can work with somebody from the committee to draft something. For this property, we also have, it's about a 1 acre red pine plantation. So this is kind of something I want to pose for you folks tonight. The management plan calls for a clear cutting of this red pine plantation because we have the red pine scale, which is an invasive insect. Basically, once it gets into this red pine stand, it'll be a fairly rapid decline of the red pine that's there. So it's kind of like a preventative measure to kind of come in, clear cut the stand, and then we'll actually add that as part of early successional habitat. Because as part of Merriam Farm, we're looking to create a bunch of early successional habitat as well. But the issue, again, is we have abutters, so we have houses fairly close. So it's a question for the board, I guess, is do we want to clear cut this piece or do we want to leave it so that it'll decline naturally? So either way, those are kind of some options that we can weigh out. Either way, if we do decide to do a basically clear cut the stand, it would be one of those situations where we'd want to reach out and say, hey, your view in your backyard is going to change a little bit. Just something to consider. And then also as part of this whole timber sale process, I've reached out to Mike Gagnon at UNH Cooperative Extension and kind of told him what we're looking to do. And we're actually looking to plan basically some harvest tours of this property. So maybe something while it's in progress or maybe a beforehand or kind of like an afterhand, just to kind of bring people in.
Yeah.
Very kind of urban, suburban setting.
Yeah.
So just kind of my thoughts in there, probably dove in a little more than we needed to, but those are just kind of some of the thoughts for that property. And then also what I'm going to do is basically after today's meeting later in the week, just kind of hit some quick bullet points as to what we talked about as a follow-up. So we'll jump over to Merriam Cutter. Yep.
Could I chime in?
Yeah.
Eric, I have a hard time with the red pine stand. I know it's probably the right thing to do to take it down, but for those of us who've seen it, it's clearly a planting. Those things are in a row as straight as an arrow, and they're right along the property line.
Yep.
And the plan was to have the hiking trail just on the town side of those.
Yeah.
So if we take all those down, and then I don't know that we could let it become early succession because the trail would be right there.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose we could let that small area where they were growing. I just don't know if there's middle ground. I mean, can you take half of them down? And right now, there's no indication that the blight has hit that little stand, is there?
Yeah, there's no indication as of yet. I'll digress slightly. I was driving through another town in southern New Hampshire today, actually, and I looked over and I saw a whole entire stand of red pine that was all, it looked like it just died within the past couple months.
Wow.
So, gonna make a phone call, basically to Extension, and then have them take a look at it and see what they say. Yeah, I agree with you, it's tough. There's no middle ground. It's like an all or nothing type of situation. We could leave it and because it's just kind of its isolated little stand by itself, and just let it kind of decline naturally, basically. Create a lot of standing dead snags, which is good for wildlife. If we do clear cut it, we can kind of roll the bulk of it into that early successional habitat that we're looking to create over there. So it's just, we don't need any answers tonight, but it's just kind of that bigger question just to pose and let everyone kind of think about it.
If we do decide to take it down, I think we need a site walk with the neighbor.
Yeah.
For sure, and probably with the committee so they can see.
Yeah.
Because not all of us have been out there
No,
to
I
see
haven't
that
seen it.
stand.
If you don't, oh, hold on, go ahead.
No, go ahead, keep going.
If you don't clear cut it,
Yep.
will it spread to other trees? Or is it just a red pine?
It's basically a pure red pine plantation
Okay.
that was planted. I mean, there's some mixed hardwood, kind of mixed oak species in the understory, those little sapling sizes.
I think Mary's question was, will the blight spread to other trees?
Yeah, it just affects the red pine.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Bob. Yeah.
Is that turn the trees like red, like kills the,
Yeah, the needles will go red, yeah.
okay, because I had some questions to ask up north. A friend of mine's got his whole yard, half the trees are orange, and I'm like, I don't know, but I'll ask a question and try to find an answer for it, and there's the answer right there. So is it a bug, or what is it?
It's a scale insect that basically,
So it is an insect?
yeah.
Okay, all right.
So-
Next is, you were talking down in the fields. I'm just curious as to, Natupski used to use those fields for corn and whatnot.
Yep.
And I'm afraid of losing the fields altogether. Do you think that we should make some type of arrangements to figure out a way to either, I don't know if they can hang them, or if they can maybe work something out to continue to grow corn in them? What's your thoughts?
Yep, so good question, and that's kind of part of the bigger kind of arching management of the property itself. We were out there last summer, roughly, I think it was in August, late August, early September, with actually Matt Tar, UNH Extension, and kind of looking at wildlife habitat potential. So that's what kind of really sparked the early successional habitat component. And we talked about everything from managing the property, say it's just open grassland, all the way to creating like 3 separate little, basically kind of ecosystems for basically like a shrubland, a grassland, and then kind of we'll say that early successional, which is going to be that forest of like 3 to 5 years, 5 to 8 years. So we got a lot of options out there basically, and we have the management plan, which kind of talks about all the options. And maybe if we do after a site walk, as the forestry committee, we can kind of look around and say, hey, this is good for this, or this would be good for that. But post timber sale, timber harvest, when the dust settles, basically kind of readdress that and then figure out, do we want to mow this, keep this open as grassland or what have you. But I think to bring it back to a hayfield, it would take a little bit of work, but we could get it there over time.
Yeah, I assume that. I don't think it would be tough to get it back to corn, do you?
I'd have to ask a farmer.
So there's a possibility that when you make the plan, that some of this may be in your plan.
Yep,
So it sounds to me like you're kind of thinking more of diversifying the piece of property, where it's not just strictly forest.
Exactly, and the reason I really like Merriam Farm is because we have this field component, which a lot of the forestry committee's properties, they don't really have a field component. So we have an option to do a lot of basically that early succession, a lot of wildlife habitat work. We could even incorporate plantings and do a lot of pollinator habitat work out there as well. So
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
As far as you talked about the end of the road, you're thinking that if you're gonna go in and out, you're gonna go in and out at the moon shadow,
Yep, correct.
dead end, so to speak.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
So basically, build a ramp so the
Yeah,
trucks can get down. in there.
that'd be the perfect area. I mean, the neighbors may have a little bit of a problem with it when the timber harvest is going on, but that won't last long.
No.
And that seems like a really good spot to get in there.
Yep.
And after we're done, we may have to figure out a way to close it off a little bit, so
Yeah.
to speak.
And the plan would be to basically barricade it with boulders, and maybe create some sort of temporary blockade in case the fire department's got to get in there for something, for
Yep,
emergency
That's
access.
the concerns. We have to, every plan now, we have to start thinking about the fire department,
Yeah,
not blocking them out.
yeah.
That might be a good spot for a gate because it's highly visible. I don't think anybody's going to rip a gate out there. So
yeah.
we should think about
The
a
neighbors
gate at
watch
that
it like a
point.
hawk over there, so.
Exactly.
All right, so the next one, just kind of, we'll dive into Merriam Cutter off of Shelburne Road.
Sherburne Road?
Sherburne, yeah, Sherburne Road.
Sherburne Road.
So we're looking to basically, going to dig out my map here, set up a timber harvest in the southwesternmost corner or the western edge, expanding over to a main hiking trail. So the long trail comes down from the north. Let me get my map here. So we've looked at that area.
Eric, if you put the map under the camera, then you can point to it.
We're looking right here. So you can kind of see that reddish, orangish trail coming down. So that Gage Lot Trail and then the long trail as well. So basically to the west of that is where we're looking to set up a harvest. And my question here for the forestry committee is if we want to jump across the trail and basically access the kind of that northernmost area as well as part of a timber harvest. It's just looking at the larger picture of management as well. We don't want to cut the front of the property and then have to go back through it to harvest the back portion of the property. So it's just a thought for tonight, just kind of posing that bigger question. But basically, you'll see there's kind of a circle with a little L. Basically, that's kind of the rough landing location that we're looking to basically have for the harvest. So that's going to be kind of that southwesternmost corner. There's a nice shelf in there. I have really good site access or site distance, Sherburne Road as well. So that's a good location, and the harvest will be away from the trail system in a nice high and dry area.
Could you point to the map where that landing is?
Yeah.
And also, where's the northern part that you were saying we should consider harvesting at the same time?
So if you look at the map, it says Phoebe Rock Loop. So we're going to consider that kind of that northern section. So basically, long trail over to we'll say Phoebe Rock, and then down kind of to the wetland area. So we'll consider that kind of like the northern compartment. So you can say it's kind of north of that large wetland, and then the landing area will be right down over here approximately.
Usually, I'm all in favor of timber harvests.
Yeah.
This property gets a tremendous amount of use.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And that, yeah, I don't have a problem with the western portion because
Yeah.
there's no trails in it. I do kind of have a problem with going into that loop, the Phoebe Loop, and starting to do timber harvesting there. I kind of think of this as maybe one of the few properties where we want to, I know old growth is not really old growth, but where
Yeah.
we want to just leave the forest to mature.
Yeah.
Because we've harvested the east section.
Eastern edge, yeah.
Now you'd be doing the northern edge, but all the trails are in the center. So,
Yes.
I mean, I'm only one vote, but I'm a little reluctant to go in and do that.
Yeah, when you were showing me that, I was thinking of like the ATVs, it'll just open it up more,
Mike
right?
Merritt's you.
It'll just open it up more for the ATVs, right? We'll just make it.
Maybe not, but it
maybe
will,
not.
it will certainly make the hiking experience a little different initially?
Well, do a site walk. Everybody can form their opinion by being there so that he can actually show, because I'm even confused right now on the landing. The landing, I'm picturing that at the end of Sherburne Road, closer to Mammoth.
No, the other.
But you're talking farther up Sherburne Road where the gate is.
Yep, so...
It's kind of in a little valley.
So even further west of the gate, the terrain comes back up again to match the road. We basically have a landing kind of straight in off of the road there. And we'd have a short access road, maybe like 300 feet, and then that would get us into the woods on a nice flat area. It's basically future infrastructure for any sort of other future management. Because the gate area that's there, that's come up in conversations over the years, but it's kind of a tricky spot. You got to come down off the road. It's tight and got a small wetland right there to deal with as well.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I had for there. And then the final property, part of Cutler Spalding, but east of Spalding Hill Road, I believe. There's just a small 25, 30 acre piece off of Aspen Drive. Basically a smaller type of harvest in there, more of an improvement type of thinning. There's no evidence of any harvesting in there within recent decades. It's well overdue for a thinning. There's a small parking lot in there that we would utilize actually for a landing, and then we would upgrade the parking lot and the access as part of the harvest. And then when we basically kind of wrap up the harvest, close out the parking lot, and the parking lot would be a little bit bigger as a result. But that one's fairly straightforward. There's some hiking trails through there as part of the harvest. We make sure those are free and clear of any sort of logging debris as well. But fairly straightforward. If anyone's got any questions on that one.
I do. When you say parking lot, you're talking the parking lot that's up off of that new development up there.
Correct.
You think that's big enough? We didn't make that very big.
No, so we would expand it. I think it's to the south,
Okay.
to the
It's
north
gotta
and east.
expand. Yeah, okay.
Slightly.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep, understood.
Yep. Okay. So that wraps up kind of the proposed timber harvest. And then also for this year, as for our forest management plans for Calitri, Moose Pond, and the quarry lots. So these are all to be treated as one large kind of comprehensive management plan, and then we'll basically kind of incorporate all of those properties together because they're kind of in the same area of Pelham. And then proposed timeline, basically field work in the fall, and then write the plans late fall or early winter. Try to have them, into you by the end of the year. And then basically propose, if management is proposed, then we would review those in 2022 for management. If anyone's got any questions on that.
I do have a question.
Yep.
Do we have anything any earlier coming up as far as timber harvest?
So the timber harvest that
The closest one, what's the closest one coming up?
it could be either basically Merriam Farm, Cutler, Merriam, or basically the Spalding Hill Road one.
Okay,
Yep.
but the plans are not done on those yet, correct?
Those have forest management plans.
They do have the
Yep,
plans?
yes.
I thought so.
Yep, and Merriam Farm was just written last year about this
I
time.
thought so, okay.
Yeah, so these would be timber sales. Those three properties would be one phase of timber sales. The Calitri, Moose Pond, quarry lots, those would be management plans with future management in 2022.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, and then finally,
Paul.
go
Paul
ahead.
has a question.
Just clarification on what you said. So you would expect to put those three out to the same, to be bid on at the same time, and you would expect to pick one company to do all three harvests this fall?
Correct, yep.
Okay, so Merriam Farm, the western part of Merriam Cutter.
Yep.
And the parcel off Spalding Hill could all be done this fall with the
Correct.
same
Yep.
operation? Okay.
Yep, because they're all in close proximity to each other.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Is there a reasonable amount of assurity that that can be done? Because you know I'm anxious to get into
Oh,
Merriam
yeah,
Farm.
yeah, no, that's the plan. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yep.
I have a question. How is the market?
Yep, so the So we follow basically the log market and roundwood markets. You can't follow the lumber market because that's its own separate beast. But markets are strong and they have strengthened for your mixed oak species as well as white pine. The whole tree field chip, which was very popular over the years, that market is close to dead. So, and then basically your roundwood markets, which are going to be kind of your pulp or your firewood. Hardwood is still, fairly strong. Firewood is extremely strong right now, or tree length cordwood as it's sold. But markets overall are fairly strong right now.
For boardwood.
Yep. So,
White pine?
sorry, I didn't hear you.
White pine?
Yep. So white pine logs, that market is also strong.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So finally, moving on to invasive species. So a couple weeks ago, we were out on Gumpus Pond after the review of the forest fire area, and then we reviewed the eastern section of Gumpus Pond for invasive species. And then I gotta grab my other report here. Then, as stated in my report, the treatment that was done in the western half last year was with good results. 90% capture of invasive plant species that were out there within our treatment areas. And then we reviewed the eastern section, which is basically that beaver pond loop, so kind of that your blue trail there. And the northern portion of the beaver pond loop had very, very minimal signs of invasive plant species. Oriental bittersweet, glossy buckthorn, of that nature. However, where the long trail and the beaver pond loop meet, kind of coming out of the parking lot and then heading westerly, very, very heavy populations of Oriental bittersweet. So some of the thickest as I've seen. So basically, we've proposed treatment for that area. However, just based on the intensity, it looks like that treatment would have to be scheduled just for 2022, just based on current schedules and workload. And then as part of continuing to monitor for invasive plant species.
Yep, Paul has a question.
Just for clarity,
Yeah.
are you saying the part that's heavily populated with bittersweet has to wait till
Oriental
2022? Yeah. Or is it or the whole thing has to wait?
The heavily populated section. So there would be no retreatment of the area that we treated last year, as the populations that are there need to continue to grow, because we need more surface area on the leaf in order to treat.
Oh.
And then in terms of the beaver pond loop, it doesn't make sense to treat the little isolated areas until we basically go there and treat the whole property together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding? Okay, so then also on the list for invasive plant reconnaissance is a small area of Costa, kind of the old landing area for the Costa property. Yep. So in part of my travels, part of next week, I'll be here for part of the day doing reconnaissance of Costa. And then Blueberry Circle was another property that was just recommended for just reconnaissance and just to check in and make sure there's nothing growing there in terms of invasive plant species. But that's pretty much it for this year. Woven Park was treated last year. In my travels, I may swing through there just to see how last year's treatment, basically how the results were from that. And then I can make recommendations based on the results that I find. Let's see. Some other side news. Gumpus Pond is due for a tree farm reinspection, so I'll conduct that this month as well. And that will keep Gumpus Pond as a certified tree farm. I don't know if anyone's got any questions related to that, or tree farm status.
I believe it was inspected. We had our forestry, what would you call it? For the tree farm to be certified every so many years, we received that. We have that.
Okay, so I received we used to be the inspection form for for Compass Pond for this year, because they're due for reinspection every 6 years. So it's come back around for reinspection.
Years go by fast.
Yeah, because last year, I believe we did Veterans Memorial Park was the one that we had done a reinspection on.
Okay.
So I think the way it's set up is it's basically one every year.
Right.
So that solves that. It's kind of fast and a lot of information. I don't know if anyone's got any specific questions.
It's a lot of information, and
Yeah.
your report was great, like very, like lots of information. But just going for the site walk with you guys, I think you really know what you're doing, and like obviously, but I don't know. Thanks for all your hard work.
And we appreciate, the opportunity to manage these lands, and we take great pride in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, moving forward, I encourage site walks with the Forestry Committee, and even, members of the community as well. The more people we can kind of get involved and, see what's going on, I think the better for everybody.
Yeah.
You haven't reached the point to do any tree marking?
Not yet.
Not yet?
No.
Paul has a question.
2 questions, Eric.
Yep.
Someone mentioned to me that they saw, I think, blue ribbons around the red trail at Gumpus. Were you hanging ribbons where the invasives are?
Yep, so we were just kind of, the blue flagging was from us for basically, hanging where we saw some invasives. Because basically what we'll do is we'll hang, blue flag over the invasives, then we'll look back through just to kind of get a better survey of the population that's out there.
Okay, that's what I told them, so I just wanted to be sure.
Yep.
And could you just spend a minute or less for the public?
Yep.
Because you sent us a report, but tell them about what you saw on the site walk Mary referred to, where we walk the fire zone.
I almost lit my blueberries on fire too. Just kidding.
Just one quick thing before you start.
Yeah.
I wanted to, he had said, you mentioned the blue ribbons. We got to make sure we tell everybody, do not remove the blue ribbons, correct? Do not remove the blue ribbons. He's going to need them in the future to keep an eye on things.
Correct.
As far as everybody that helps us out there in the trails, don't remove the blue ribbons.
Right.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And I'll do a better job, just basically saying if I hang some flagging somewhere, so we don't raise any questions.
Thank you.
But yeah, just, kind of diving into the, basically that small forest fire folks had back was the end of April. So a couple weeks ago, we went out and kind of did just a general reconnaissance of the area. Mike Gagner from UNH Cooperative Extension came out to join us. Coworker Jeff Snicken came out. So 3 foresters kind of poking and prodding and kind of looking at a bunch of different things, which was really neat. But take-home message is that the forest is fine. It was a very unfortunate event. We did end up receiving basically some mortality kind of in the main crown. So as foresters, we're always looking at that main crown because that's the age class, that's the forest that we're currently looking to grow. So we did see some mortality. I estimated 5-10% at most. But if you're just hiking around and you're walking around, you walk up in there and you look, it's shocking initially because you look around and you see all the, the white pine, we'll say seedlings, saplings, up to 10, 12 feet tall. And they're dead, all of them. I didn't see a single one. The reasoning behind that is just the very, very thin bark, not very well protected against the heat. Not a forest fire expert, but it looked like the fire was very fast moving, kind of a lighter intensity. I think where we did end up seeing some mortality and kind of in that main crown class, basically it was just a result of localized kind of intense heat. The other really neat thing to see, as you mentioned, the blueberries is just the flush of growth that's coming in after the forest fire. So just a lot of, low bush blueberry was coming back in. We're seeing a lot of mixed oak seedlings, so little seedlings, 6-8 feet tall. A lot of grasses, surprisingly, which was very unique to see. But overall, maybe just a side step, but not a step backwards, and could have been much worse.
So the regeneration is happening,
Yeah.
small stuff. What about a larger, can you give me a timeline as to what you think, how long it's going to take for it to regenerate?
So the management currently in there is not so much based around regenerating the forest. It's more about continuing to grow the trees that are in there. So that's how we kind of talk about that main crown class, because those trees are existing. So the last harvest in there was kind of more focused around just kind of like a weeding and a thinning, so more of a tending. So those trees that we left, those trees are just as healthy, minus that 5 to 10%, which for whatever reason basically succumbed to the fire damage. We did do some small little patch cuts in there, and those seem to be doing fine. I actually got a lot of grass that came back into one of them.
That's good.
And at the suggestion of UNH Cooperative Extension, they talked about even doing some plantings in some of those openings to kind of help bring things along.
Good for the scouts.
Yep, exactly. And there was a lot of excitement in terms of just having a property to hold workshops on, because these small localized forest fires, they may become more common over time just with climate change and these drier conditions as well.
A few years ago, we had a fire up there that was more extensive. And have you been up there? Where it was, up on the top?
Are you talking about Raymond Park, where the fire was?
No, I'm talking about, yeah.
Yeah. So a little different parcel than where we were.
Okay.
We were at Cutter Spalding.
Oh, okay.
And you're talking about Raymond, yeah.
I was talking about Raymond, but we had quite a fire up there, and it spread through the duff underground.
Oh, wow.
And so the fire department was kept having to do a perimeter to try to contain it, but it burned for a long time.
Yeah, when it really gets into the duff layer, basically it'll just sit there and smolder, and then it'll just wait for the opportunity to come back up again.
Yeah.
And those very intense, kind of those deeper fires, that's where we see a lot more damage, because it really gets into the root system. It was kind of joking a little bit. We're out there, it looked like somebody had kind of swept, the forest floor, because we burnt the top of that duff layer, so basically that leaf litter. So we did lose that in terms of nutrients, but overall it could have been much worse.
Good.
The only other recommendation basically when we're out there was just making sure we get those trails kind of blocked off again, however we do it, just to kind of keep unwanted, truck and ATV access from getting into the skid trail
Thank you.
network. So,
Thank you so much.
perfect, that's all I have.
Awesome, thank you. It was a lot. You did a lot of work, thank you.
He's been a busy man.
All right, and our second guest speaker today is Bill Collins from the Hudson, New Hampshire Conservation Commission.
I don't know what you're saying.
And I don't know where Jim went, but, oh, okay. He has one to put up on the TV.
Thank you.
I get some. Oh, perfect, yours is colored. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Madam Chairman. Bill Collins, representing the Hudson Conservation Commission. And this is one of my committee members, Randy Brownrigg. Last spring, about the March or April timeframe, the Hudson Conservation Commission took the task of building a new stream crossing along some of the property along Musquash Pond. And with that, we were able to open up more of the property for hikers to enjoy. And after a little bit of discussion at various meetings, the Conservation Commission wondered if Pelham would mind if we kind of encroached a little bit onto your property and created a new trail. The map that I just handed out is draft format. It's going to go through a bunch of markups, and we will be taking care of that. The other thing we'd like to do is connect to the Gumpus Pond Conservation Area down off the end of Gowing Road. There's a little trail segment that we would have to create and a little stream crossing to get that done. And that would allow hikers to, come from the Musquash area all the way down to Gumpus Pond, or vice versa, all the way from Gumpus Pond all the way up to the Musquash area. Mr. Gagnon helped us with the bridge construction, which we really appreciated. And, he and I took a stroll out there and, looked at the area, and it's a good, solid area for a stream crossing and, expansion of the trail system.
Okay.
So that's why we're here tonight.
All right, and I think like the main concern was to open that up would be bring in the ATVs, but Mr. Gagnon said about, can you tell us more about that? It's a wetland, or it's wet? There won't be like a...
Oh, the expansion coming across to the Compass Pond Conservation Area?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a significant portion of upland that we can create a trail on, but it would require a small stream crossing with probably a rudimentary bridge for people to get across. There are some dry areas in between, so we could always pick the narrowest point to come across, so we're not really damaging anything in the wetland area or causing a major construction portion in the wetland area. It's something that we'd probably want to look at in the late fall once the foliage dies back, so we get a better idea, because right now everything is lush and green out there. We've had a great summer so far, and everything's growing like crazy. So, yeah, the segment is up on the screen now, the yellow.
Yeah. Does anybody want to make a motion to vote on the idea?
Just clarify, oh, Jim, could you put that back up? That was great.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, if you look at the low central portion of that, you see there's like an upside-down U. Maybe I could, I can't speak and point to it.
Purple?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, below that, Mary. No, the very, no, down, right there.
In green.
That is I think that's the red loop on Pelham's land, sometimes we call it the rabbit loop. That's where the early succession is. That's where Eric just talked about marking invasive species and hanging blue flags.
You're right, okay.
So Bill is talking about putting in that stretch of yellow trail, which would connect from existing trail in Pelham, across a little stream and up to their big blue trail.
Right.
And having walked it with them, I think it's a good idea. I don't think there's a big risk of ATVs because there's a stream crossing, but there's also some really muddy low areas. In fact, it looks like the snowmobile guys go right through there in the winter, but of course everything's frozen, so it's okay. I don't think ATVs could get through, and we're not talking about making a bridge 6 feet wide. We're talking about
a foot
making
bridge.
a footbridge that would only support hikers, so I think it's kind of a neat idea to connect Hudson's trails to Pelham's trails. It's the first time we will have done that.
Yeah, this would probably be a collaborative effort, so once we have, a direction we all want to follow, we can, come together and actually plan it out, costs or whatever we need to do, because obviously there'll be some signposts needed, some signs created, the bridge crossing, and things like that. So, I mean, but it'd be a collaborative effort between the town of Hudson and the town of Pelham. And I think it'd be good for, people in general just to get out and hike the trails back there. It's a beautiful area, and well, I'll say it's underutilized right now. Some of the trails do exist already. The Musquash Brook Trail and the part of the Blue Loop Trail actually does exist, but it needs maintenance, and then that little dog leg that we want to create would have to be cleared.
Okay. What do you guys think? Who wants to make a motion?
Well, I just wanted to make sure that, clarify what he was saying about the bridges. You want to make sure that they're very narrow, any of the water crossings, so that we're not going to have a problem.
Right.
And have to deal with issues that we're dealing with all over. So just keep in mind that whatever you guys build or whatever we decide to build or whatever we work together on, we got to make sure we keep it very narrow.
Yeah. I think if you look around through the state at various conservation areas, you'll find numerous types of bridge constructions. And, something that I had in mind, and I think Mr. Gagnon kind of agreed, was even something as narrow as a couple of 2x12s put together.
Yeah.
So that people can walk safely across it, but it's not wide enough to, I know where you're going with this,
exactly.
The quad or the ATVs or motorcycles. And, I mean, if there's something there, they will try, but I think we can design it in a way that it's not really passable by
Yeah,
that.
sometimes even if you know, if you get something with a little bit of length to it, you put a little turn in it.
Right.
Exactly,
A
exactly.
little tricky,
Right.
so.
There's a lot of design.
But it was like a lot of the snowmobile trails in this town have been intentionally moved over to, you know, where it's gonna freeze up little areas.
Right.
Where there's no way you're going through there with an ATV, but in the wintertime, you can make it across it because it's all frozen. So everything dead ends and stops. You try to keep it that way, so everything dead ends and stops wherever you can, but it's difficult.
Right. The bridge that we actually built last spring was Mr. Gagner's design, and I haven't seen a tire track on it yet, put it that way. It's narrow, there's 4x4 posts with some ropes to, you know, for handrails. We spotted it in such a fashion that it actually runs in line with a stone wall. So you'd have to ride on the stone wall before you can even get on the bridge. But, yeah, we can certainly look at the design features, but again, you know, that's something probably late fall, early winter, you know.
November's a good time. November's a great time to get out there.
Right, so,
Well, it sounds like we're all on the same page, you know, as far as the bridges go and working together and keeping it,
right.
you know, so,
Awesome.
Did you want to take a vote, Mary?
yeah, what do you think?
So I'll make a motion to approve two separate trails. One is the yellow trail that would connect Musquash to Pelham, and that needs some work.
Right.
Because that needs the bridge, and we would work collaboratively. I'm sure we'll be back in front of the committee when we figure out how much it would cost and when we need volunteers. The other is to authorize the Hudson Conservation Commission and their volunteers to extend their Blue Trail into Pelham's land. It's a piece of Pelham land that we can't get to, but you can get to it from Hudson. And so that's the little blue dog leg. I don't know if Jim wants to put that map back up, or the guys back there. Can you put that map back up, gentlemen? What is that, the one in the corner? Oh, maybe you have it, Bill. Can you put it under? Yeah, can you put it under the camera? There we go, there we go. Okay, so, that's it, exactly, Mary. Yeah, that.
Like a nose.
Yeah, like a nose.
Right, that's a better shot.
There you go,
Right
there you go.
Right.
So you can see the yellow line running from the upper right to the lower left, that's the town line, and then the blue that comes over and goes through the sign that says Town of Pelham.
Yeah.
That's all, and I've walked part of that. Those blue trails are nice, the red trails are nice. I think it's a nice added loop, and we ought to authorize those folks to do it, so it's a long-winded motion.
All right.
Okay, I second that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So you guys should be all set.
All right. Thank you very much.
We'll be looking forward,
yeah,
probably
we'll,
getting in touch. What are you thinking, like, try to get in touch in November?
Yeah,
Beginning of-
usually.
The beginning of November, you know, kind of like when the leaves are down, and
Right.
try to get out there then and
I'll probably get ahead and
tag
mark
it,
some of
mark
the
it.
trails.
Yeah, okay. I was gonna
And,
say,
that
maybe
way
tag
we
it
can go in
before.
there, right, with
Yeah.
some tools and do some clearing. And just, the clearing will be minimum. Obviously 20, you know, a couple of feet, maybe 3 or 4 feet, you know, wide, just for good passage, safe passage. And it'll be a good thing for the towns.
Yeah, it sounds like a win-win. We'll get access to that,
Right.
and you guys can extend your trail. And it actually like gives the Gumpus Pond Trail a little bit more,
Yeah.
so.
Right. When we built the bridge, we always kind of envisioned, you know, seeing if you guys wanted to, you know, team up and try to open that up, because like I says, it just opens up miles of hiking for everybody.
That's
And with
awesome.
the pandemic of last year, our trail usage at Musquash probably was, I want to say it was up around 75%.
Yeah.
There wasn't a day you didn't go down there and it wasn't filled with cars, so.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is good, so.
I missed your friend's name. I was writing it down.
Randy. First name's Randy,
Randy.
and the last name's Brown Rig.
Right.
just the way it sounds.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
One other thing I wanted to mention, I was figuring that we were probably going to end up working with a kid that has a name of Brett, last name Gagnon. I don't know.
No,
You know
neither.
Brett Gagnon?
We don't let them anywhere near town hall.
So, I mean, you know, I thought maybe that we'd be sitting down with him someday, but he got smart, and he ended up running for selectman, and I think he's a selectman now, if I remember correctly.
No idea.
I think he's name dropping. Yeah. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Good
it.
evening. Enjoy the heat.
Thanks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're all invited.
All right, so that's it with our guest speakers. The next thing on our list is, we wanted to talk about the role of the subcommittee, and we have a bunch of subcommittee people to choose from. So do we want to go through and vote on who we're going to invite to July's?
Mary, do we have a limit on the size of the subcommittee?
Is it 5? Did we, I think it's up to us.
Yeah, I think the
So-
selectmen said that it would be up to us as far as what size of a subcommittee. This thing here says, you know, role of the subcommittee. So I think what we ought to do is maybe start off discussing the actual role of the subcommittee. What's everybody's thoughts? Not to, but
We can always use more help on the trails, but we already have this concept of volunteers and trail adopters, so it might be duplicitous to make a subcommittee role for that. What do we need done? Oh, finance is one, I think, that we decided would be helpful to have a subcommittee member who's knowledgeable in accounting.
Exactly, yep.
Well, my initial thought was having a subcommittee with a role, but then after reading the letter Deb sent to the selectmen when she first came up with this idea, her thought was that it's really more like an alternate on another board. So, for example, Conservation has 7 members and 3 alternates. The alternates don't have a separate function. They come to all the meetings, they comment like we would. They would sit up here with us. They just wouldn't vote. The one difference between an alternate and a subcommittee member is on the Conservation Commission, if we don't have a quorum, we appoint one of the alternates to vote. Apparently, state law doesn't allow us to do that with forestry. We can have a subcommittee, but they can't vote.
Right.
So my thought would be, let's appoint members and let them come to the meetings, and then we'll just see how it plays out.
Yeah.
We'll have more people on the committee, more people will volunteer to help with things, more people will learn the process. The whole thing, writing warrant articles, funding it, hearing from Eric, going on site walks.
Yeah.
We'll put them on our distribution list. They'll get all the emails that go between the 5 of us, will go between the 10 of us.
Yeah, so we all do it, we all do the same work together.
Yeah, and then when somebody like me, who's been on the committee a long time, and is probably not gonna stay too much longer, and decides to resign, you've got members who have been sitting here for
Already know
a
the
few
job.
years,
Yep.
and they know what it takes, and then hopefully the selectmen, because we don't appoint
Right.
our own members, but hopefully the selectmen would pick from the subcommittee members
Right,
to make them committee members.
right.
That would be my thought anyway, instead of giving them a specific role.
Okay, so all in favor of having?
hold on for a
Oh,
second,
yeah.
Mayor, I'd like to, I'm thinking similar to Paul, but I'm thinking of, you know, when we get into these projects, I'm hoping that we can have a subcommittee that can be helpful on literal, you know, in the woods construction also. Like, I'm thinking that, you know, some of these young guns, like, much younger than us.
Well, that's what he's saying.
So that-
They would be doing the same work that we're doing. So they'd be helping
Yeah.
build the bridges with us. They'd be going on sidewalks with us. Like, if one has, you know, a talent that is like building a bridge,
Carpentry or something, yeah.
yeah, you know, right?
Because, I mean, you know, Paul and I have been having many discussions lately about how we're getting older and eventually we're gonna be done.
Hey, speak for
We
yourself.
need-
I'm not getting older.
We need to be replaced sooner or later. And it's time now to start training these young guns to come in and start getting things done. And you need a combination, you know what I mean? We gotta figure out a way to make a combination of people. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, so I definitely think that we should go through the list and decide who we're gonna invite, you know, or, what do you guys
We
think?
want to give ourselves time to review this. I mean, we just got this tonight. We haven't had
Oh.
time to, although
Yeah.
in the very short time I have spent reading it, there's not a person on here that I don't think has something to offer.
Yeah, so we emailed all these out? So you guys all got, no?
No,
No.
this is- I'm with Charlie. This is the first I've seen. In fact,
All right, well, read up.
I have one question. A gentleman named Don Paquin applied when the selectmen did their interviews, and I don't see him in here. Is that, Bob, because he did not apply for the
Yeah, there was
subcommittee?
some of them that didn't make I got a little slip from the town hall that said that the date wasn't submitted in time, proper time.
Is that Don Paquin?
No,
Okay.
I don't know if he wants me to mention his name. Yeah, it's Scott. Scott and I had a discussion about this situation.
I actually submitted 2 applications, and you got one of them.
You should come up to the mic.
I submitted 2 applications. One of them was basically as soon as I saw that the forestry committee was in the middle of transition, I wasn't able to get in touch with anybody, and I said, oh, well, okay, now they're going through some sort of application process to be a volunteer. As is obviously evident from the discussion you just had, it's not really clear what one is applying for. I'm not offended that I'm not in the list here. I will, whenever I see an opportunity for me to fit in, I will volunteer. I don't feel as though I need to be a formal member of a subcommittee, and if you think that I should be, then you can invite me, and that's fine. I'm not, don't worry about offending me, I'll put it that way.
Thank you, because we have the problem of having 7 applicants for 5, and as Charlie just said, I'm not anxious to pick the 2 that we're not going to pick, because it's
You're
a
not going
good
to break my
list.
heart, that's for sure.
I
so.
know.
Yeah.
Well, I
And you're-
definitely think we should invite them and have interviews, right? And then.
All of them,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, and then,
I like that, and I agree with Charlie. We should have time to read these.
yeah, so
and
why
come
don't we
up with
put
some
this on
questions.
hold? We'll read them, and then we'll just email everybody, all 7, to have them come next month.
Something like that sounds good, yeah. And Scott, thank you, because I did contact him because I felt obligated.
I'm going to give you your list back.
Sure.
For those who don't know, Scott's a trail adopter for Peabody, and he's a very active trail adopter. He walks the trails, God, he must walk them 2 or 3 times a week all year.
Not when it's this hot.
So he's definitely involved.
Get him some snowshoes.
Right. So I think if the purpose of the discussion was to agree on what the subcommittee members are going to do, if everyone agreed with the
Yep.
comments that have been made, then now the
They would-
subcommittee members know they're going to be basically sitting here with us.
Yep, they would have the same role as we do, responsibilities we do, site walks and all that, they're just non-voting members.
Exactly. And to
Yes.
Bob's point, when it's like, hey, those Hudson guys need help building a bridge, who's going to volunteer? Well, we have 10 of us to look at instead of only 5.
Yes, that's
the big.
That's big.
That's the big benefit. And
Okay.
I agree. I'd like to read these and then
Okay,
have the people come to our next meeting.
excellent, so we're in agreement of the subcommittee role. Sounds good?
It sounds good to me, and I was concerned about the subcommittee, but actually, it would function very well as long as they were here and they were, by virtue of the fact, listening and seeing what goes on and what projects are involved and how involved they are. And that helps prepare them for, because I think I told Mary how many years it took me to get adjusted to the planning board, because I had to learn from scratch.
Yep.
And this, at least, they are introduced to what's gonna
Oh, okay, yeah.
come down.
Yeah, excellent.
That's the list of
So
everybody.
are we ready to move on to, Paul, you want to talk about a new proposal?
These are all the
Yeah, let's talk about the other end of the spectrum. So we've been talking about
applications.
new folks,
Folks.
potentially younger,
Yeah,
who want to get involved. Well, I'm proposing that on the other end, when it's time
Retirement?
to retire, yes, that we have a position which exists in corporate America on board of directors. You often have boards of directors, and then someone resigns from the board, they become an advisor to the board. So they're no longer a voting member, but they have a lot of, I'll use Bob's words, institutional knowledge. And I could see myself doing that. It would be a lot easier to resign from the committee, not reapply for a committee position, if you knew you could come to the meetings as an advisor and just sort of keep an eye on what's going on and listen in, just so you're not like chopped off one day you remember, one day you're
right,
dead.
but it helps the committee as well, because
And
if
it
you
could help the
leave and you're
committee.
taking all that knowledge, I mean, if you're still active and involved, you're just helping. So
Right.
It's a huge help.
And unlike the subcommittee, we have 5, I don't think we need 5 advisors, but I would suggest we start with 1 and
Case by
maybe,
case, yeah.
maybe we only start for 1 year. One thing for the folks applying for the subcommittee, we have to stagger those positions.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be 2 for 1 year and 2 for 2 years and 1 for 3 years.
Okay.
So when you're reading these, not that it's tough enough to decide who the 2 are you won't vote for, but you got to now decide who gets a 3-year appointment, which 2 get a 2-year appointment, which 2 get a 1-year appointment.
Okay.
And then in a year, obviously, those
Yeah.
2 people that come back, and we can then give them 3-year appointments.
Right.
So eventually, everybody will get their 3 years, but
Yeah.
anyway, but I would suggest the advisor, just to see how it works, we try it for a year. And full disclosure, I would ask us to consider